Welcome back to Free Media. I'm Amber Duke.
And I'm Robby Soave. Well, Jay Bhattacharya is shaking up the NIH. The good doctors put an end to experimentation on beagles that was widely decried by both animal welfare groups and also many conservatives, given that Anthony Fauci was the one who signed off on funding for these experiments. Let's watch.
Is it hard right now to change the culture there?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, it's been interesting to watch. Like I'll do some policy change, and people like try to find the worst possible spin for it. I'll give you a couple of examples. So, for instance, I put out a policy to make sure that we have when we use we have animals in research that we look at alternatives. You know, it's very easy, for instance, to cure Alzheimer's in mice, but those things don't translate to humans. So we've put forward a policy to replace animals in research with other technological advances, AI and other tools that actually translate better to what human health. But then I'm getting, and we got rid of all the beagle experiments on the NIH campus. But you know, it's sort of like people just don't trust the NIH anymore, and I can understand why. The NIH during the pandemic leaned into lockdowns, school closures, all these things, and so I think there's still a level of distrust that the American people have for the NIH that I'm hoping under President Trump we can reverse.
Has PETA reached out to you and told you you're the latest hero? Like, I mean, they must be ecstatic with you right now.
They did. I got flowers from PETA, you know, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Normally, I think NIH directors tend to get physical threats, but they sent me flowers.
PETA is generally an insane organization, to be clear, but you know what? I'm going to give them this one. I'm glad about this news. It's just as Dr. Bhattacharya put it. I think there might be cases where animal experimentation is necessary and appropriate. We should not, I don't think we need to value animals to the same degree we value people, but we want to treat them as best as we possibly can. There are so many experiments on animals that are totally pointless, needless. As he said, as technology develops, AI technology, we don't need to do some of these things, and that's great. I'm not ruling out that it's never appropriate, but what was going on sounds just absolutely gratuitous. And on dogs, we love dogs. Dogs are not proximate to humans. It's man's best friend. It's very cruel. So I was very glad to hear about this. I don't think conservatives would have been so alarmed about this years ago, but Dr. Fauci is such a polarizing figure now that everything he touches is rightly a concern.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the things that he was doing to dogs was just so beyond the pale and so unnecessary. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think there are certain cases where you want to test that something is safe on a living being before it gets tested on a human, and in those limited cases it's acceptable. But it was almost like they were just playing God in some of these instances, just seeing like how much they could get away with and how much misery they could cause these poor animals, and it was really awful to see. Like I always think of the example of the cosmetic industry and like the hair industry.
Yeah.
It used to be the case that a bunch of shampoos, for example, were tested on like cats and dogs before they were approved for human consumption. And like they make different cat shampoo and human shampoo for a reason, and it's because they have entirely different hair patterns. Yeah. And so him talking about the lack of translation from animal health to human health, particularly when you're talking about mice, I think is a really important point.
Medical ethicists are wrong about everything.
Pretty much,
in my view, I've come to really not appreciate them. The level of, they show a lot of risk unawareness to me, or a lot of like they would never sanction things in actual ticking time bomb scenarios. In some ways, actually I brought this up on Rising today when we talked about this. Interested what you feel about it. Some ways I think we're actually getting this backwards because animals cannot like give consent to be experimented on. Human beings actually can. Now I don't want to do experiments on humans recklessly or without their permission, certainly, but this kind of came up during COVID when we're like, if human challenge trials are going to get vaccines faster for people who want them, I'm not for requiring vaccines on anyone, but a lot of people did want to take them, and if plausibly this could prevent deaths of elderly or sick people by having it approved days earlier, and one way to do that would be for healthy young people who are at minimal risk of a negative COVID outcome to consent to get the vaccine and then be exposed to COVID, and you pay them for doing it. I don't think that's unethical if it's with their permission. And medical ethicists will say, no, that is 100% unethical. You can't do that. And I'm like, well, then screw you. I don't know. That's bad. That's bankrupt.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, during the first term, Trump introduced that right to try legislation.
Yes, we love that.
Right,
yes.
which allowed people who were terminal or otherwise suffering from a debilitating disease and had exhausted all other treatment options to try an experimental treatment. And I think they should absolutely have the right to do that. You know, I have a family member who was in one of the early treatment groups for a experimental treatment for a very serious disease, and they ended up going into remission for
goodness.
the rest of their life.
Wow.
And it led to a lot of great research on that product. And so I have a huge amount of the willingness to give people the freedom to make that choice.
Absolutely. Wow, that's great. That's very powerful. Yeah, I totally agree. And so more, ethics of consent, not doing things, without people's permission or understanding. They should be made aware of the risks, all of that. But then it's up to you to make that determination, not the state or the government.
Also, when you hear about these dog research things that Fauci was doing, doesn't it make you question when places like Harvard are like, they're defunding cancer research? We're not allowed to study cancer anymore. I'm always like, but what research?
Yes, I totally agree with you. It's always, you're taking away food from starving kids or whatever. I'm like, is that what it is?
Is that really what we were doing?
Yeah, I'm sure I don't agree with everything being forced on Harvard by the Trump administration, but it is always, these are otherwise very wealthy institutions saying what we're entitled to unlimited public funding for whatever we say. I don't necessarily trust you. Indeed. Thanks for watching Free Media today. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll have more content for you tomorrow.